Back in March of this year, a huge amount of unaccounted cash was recovered from the residence of Justice Yashwant Verma, who at that time was a sitting judge in the Delhi High Court. This was at his official residence. A fire broke out the day after Diwali. Justice Verma was not at his residence at that time, but there were videos of these burnt cash notes that were found at his home. They sent shockwaves across the country. Now the Supreme Court in-house panel has indicted Justice Verma, who has then subsequently been transferred to the Allahabad High Court. The panel, which was formed by the former Chief Justice of India on the 22nd of March, found merit in the allegations and has gathered testimony from numerous witnesses, including, of course, the staff of Justice Verma. Now, the committee report has been sent to the Prime Minister as well as to the President for necessary action, which includes starting the process of impeachment, for which an impeachment motion needs to be brought forth in Parliament and is likely to be brought forth in the upcoming monsoon session of Parliament. But here's what the panel found. This was a 3-judge panel. It had judges from 3 different high courts of the country. It said that material including burned sacks of notes was surreptitiously moved out of the room, which was part of the outhouse exactly a day after much of the money was blazed up in a mysterious fire. According to the Supreme Court appointed panel, removing these burnt notes was akin to destruction of crucial evidence, so that no links could be established with the judge. The panel also believes that the court staff at the judge's house that night was likely involved in the destruction of evidence. The judge, during the course of the investigation, had reportedly claimed that the outhouse was not locked, but the committee has found that the room was kept locked, and it was only after the fire incident that the lock was broken open. This was, of course, to allow the firefighters and the first responders to enter the room.
Everyone has a stake that there should be no corruption and action should take place if there is any, or investigation should take place or process should begin if there are any allegations of corruption. So essentially, it will really boil down to 2 issues. One is the invocation of Article 124(4) of the Constitution of India, under which a judge can be removed through the parliamentary procedure. And the second is whether there should be a criminal investigation and the registration of an FIR to begin that criminal investigation into the allegations.
We have raised several critical questions with regard to the money found in the judge's residence. And instead of taking certain concrete action, they postponed him, they transferred him to some other place, then again some internal inquiry, 3-member inquiry. What is all that going on?
कांग्रेस हमेशा भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ रही है। जुडिशरी का हम सम्मान करते हैं। हम मानते हैं लोकतंत्र का ऐसा मजबूत स्तंभ है जिस पे जन जन का विश्वास है। उसका विश्वास बनाए रखने के लिए गुण दोष पर हम उस पर विचार करें।
Now, there's growing chorus for Justice Verma's impeachment. The union government could likely bring a motion for impeachment during the upcoming monsoon session of Parliament. The government is also in touch with opposition members of Parliament, and the process of impeachment is likely to be initiated by one of the officers, either of the Lok Sabha Speaker or the Rajya Sabha Chairman. Now, here's how the impeachment process goes through. First, the notice for initiation needs to be signed by at least 100 Lok Sabha MPs or 50 Rajya Sabha MPs. Depending on which house the motion is moved, the chair has the discretion whether or not to allow it. If admitted, a 3-member panel is formed to further probe the charges against the judge. These include a Supreme Court judge, a High Court Chief Justice, and a distinguished jurist. The judge is entitled to a fair hearing, including the right to respond to charges and cross-examine witnesses. And if he's found guilty, then the matter is sent to the Parliament for vote. There needs to be a 2/3 majority vote that is required for the impeachment motion to go through.
A fire on May 14th has set the whole judicial circle on a big fireball. Justice Yashwant Verma, whose curious case has left not only the judiciary, but now the tremors are being felt at the Parliament itself. The government is mulling on an impeachment motion against Justice Yashwant Verma. The opposition has been talked about it so that a 2/3 majority can actually be reached. What is impeachment? Impeachment is a very, very rare sight that one can see, at least in the Indian Parliament. As far as today is concerned, there is no judge that has been impeached by the Parliament itself. Now, how the impeachment would actually take place is that at least 100 MPs of the Lok Sabha or 50 MPs of the Rajya Sabha would have to sign a motion to move that particular motion for impeachment of Justice Verma after this report of the in-house panel has now come in from, in fact, the Chief Justice of India, after Justice Verma refused to resign even after repeated asking of the then Chief Justice of India, Justice Sanjeev Khanna. Now, when this impeachment motion would be moved after getting assent from either 100 MPs in the Lok Sabha or 50 in the Rajya Sabha, then the chairman would constitute a fresh committee as far as which would constitute, in fact, a Supreme Court judge, a Chief Justice of a High Court, and an eminent jurist, which could be, in fact, nominated by either the Chief Justice of India or the government itself. So very categorically, after all of this procedure is followed, and if at all there is a misconduct that this committee too finds, and a consensus is reached as far as a two-third majority is attained in the parliament, then the president would be asked to remove Justice Verma, because the president itself is the appointing authority of the judges itself.
All right, I want to go across to Mr. Arima Sundaram, is senior advocate of the Supreme Court. So this case against Justice Verma, now the government is planning to bring in an impeachment motion in the upcoming parliament session. But given that, in the past, Mr. Sundaram, all judges who were accused of such impropriety, such misconduct, the impeachment proceedings didn't really go through. They, in fact, ended up resigning before the impeachment went through in parliament. Could the same likely happen in this case as well?
No, I said an impeachment motion, in fact, was carried through to its fruition in the case of Justice V. Ramaswamy, but it was defeated in the House of Parliament, and therefore Houses of Parliament, and therefore he was not impeached. In the case of the other judges, P.D. Dinakaran and I think Sengupta, the impeachment motions were actually initiated, moved, but they resigned in the meantime. Now, without a doubt, since the whole purpose of impeachment is to remove the judge, if the judge himself resigns, then the question of removing him does not arise. Let's understand what impeachment really is. Impeachment is not in the nature of a punishment. It's not as though you committed an offense and therefore you have to be punished for it. Impeachment is actually a protective device for constitutional authorities, that they cannot just be removed and therefore they will have security of tenure. And therefore their removal from office is a very elaborate procedure, which is impeachment, whether under Article 124 or Article 218. So the purpose of impeachment is that a person you would want to remove, you have to go through this whole process so that you cannot be fickle in his appointment and removal. It's a very serious constitutional office. He must have a complete security when he's discharging his functions. He should not be worried that he can be threatened with being taken away, his employment being taken away. And therefore, this elaborate procedure is laid down. So the purpose of impeachment is not to punish. Purpose of impeachment is to remove a person from office. Punishment comes under other provisions of law. Where a person
let's talk about those other provisions of law which so far have not been exercised in this case. The question that's being asked is, it's been over 2 months now since this cash was allegedly discovered at the judge's residence, in the outhouse of his residence. He denies it, but the visuals are there for everybody to see. A 3-judge committee appointed by the former Chief Justice of India went into it. They found material enough to lay the blame certainly on the judge, if not the judge's staff. Why is no criminal action being taken against this said judge? I mean, why has not even an FIR been filed?
Well, that is a decision for the government to take. The question of an FIR being filed against him is that if the state does find that there is sufficient reason to lodge an FIR, the state has to file it. Now the state has not. In fact, in a matter like this, the state, once it gets the sanctions for prosecution from the Chief Justice and as laid down in the procedure, a competent officer can immediately register an FIR and take action under law. But if no one is taking action, that's a decision for the authorities, whether the police themselves, whether the investigative agencies, or whether the government. Somebody has to register an FIR.
All right, Mr. Arima Sundaram, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see how the story plays out against Justice Yashwant Verma.